Peace, and blessings, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Noble Lightheart, and just so you know that I am somewhat qualified, I'd like to give you my credentials. I have an undergraduate degree in molecular biology and bioinformatics from the University of Waterloo. I have an MD from the University of Geneva in Switzerland, where I also obtained a master's degree for my research in pancreatic and islet transplantation. I practiced as a visceral surgeon. I am not a virologist, I am not an immunologist. However, I do not believe that you need to be any form of expert to understand that something has gone drastically wrong over the last year and a half. The gap between the published, peer-reviewed scientific literature and what the governments and its paid advisors are trumpeting is now exceedingly large. To have such a gap between data and scientific evidence on the one hand, and public policy and social beliefs on the other hand, is dangerous for our societies. It has resulted in the deterioration of dialogue and intense societal divisions. Increasing numbers of people feel they can no longer go along with what the government is saying, while on the other side, the government and its supporters increasingly resort to force and coercion because evidence and persuasion are no longer available to them. Admitting they are wrong is simply too difficult for them psychologically and too costly for them personally. Unfortunately, this entire crisis has been mishandled from the beginning. The debate around policy has been pushed into an area that is not only clearly ineffective, but more importantly, inherently unethical. From the beginning, there has been no focus on treatment or prevention, no focus on natural immunity and the implications on the broader public, no sentinel testing, no effort to spend a fraction of the billions of dollars printed to increase beds, which is the original reason we were told we needed to lock down. And a completely exaggerated focus on lockdowns and masks, which have been proven and are now proven even harder to be scientifically ineffective. As a doctor and a citizen, this boggles my mind. The government's policies have been founded on a three-pronged premise that 1, lockdowns, masks, and vaccines are the only way out of this. 2, this strategy is based on evidence. 3, if you don't believe this or you don't want to follow this, you're selfish and you don't care about other human beings or science. All three premises are false. I am upset because it should be obvious by now that this narrative is not scientifically founded, it is unethical even if it was, and most importantly, it is causing magnitude more harm than it is preventing. This is undebatable on every level. We have a surgery backlog of 3.5 years, not to mention the psychological, financial, societal implications. How can we quantify the damage done to children who have not been able to interact for a year? How can we quantify the damage done to people who have lost their businesses and life savings? How can we quantify the damage to people who have died in forced isolation like prisoners of war? Denying people their grief and closure, this is equivalent to medical kidnapping. But because people are shamed for expressing dissent, we are collectively on a train to absurdity. Since when is shame a tool of truth? Measures of protection should always be voluntary and focused on the individual employing them. If the measures are ineffective for the individual, the solution is inadequate or poorly conceptualized. I have a lot more to say, but for the sake of time, I want to skip to the more important part. Say it all? The truth is, sorry, one sec. All right, where are we? The current approach to vaccination is dangerous. Based on risk, there is little to no scientific rationale why anyone under the age of 50 in good health should be receiving an experimental vaccine.
Yes!
They are experimental. Clinical trials on COVID vaccines will end in late 2022 or early 2023. Emergency authorization is not equivalent to approval. Vaccines have a minimum 2-year safety cycle for good reason. They are not drugs, they do not clear the system, they are long-lasting by design. And adverse events can take years to manifest. mRNA specifically as a modality is entirely new, and we are using it on the maximum number of people in the shortest amount of time. This is the definition of dangerous and irresponsible. Now let me just go on the record. I'm not saying the vaccines are unsafe, but I'm saying we do not know if we are safe, and to assume they are safe is irresponsible.
Yes.
The inconvenient truth is serious adverse events are more likely in the young, who ironically are at the least risk from the virus itself. And we can also assume that the adverse events that we're all hearing about are being underreported and underdiagnosed because of a reluctance to believe that the vaccines could be unsafe, both by patients and by doctors. The fact that many adverse events were unknown or underreported by manufacturers on release, such as the clotting we've all heard of, but also zona, myocarditis, cellulitis, palsy, seizures, menstrual abnormalities, and death. The fact that none of those were reported should have been an alarm. The fact that the governments are now acknowledging that the risk of dying from AstraZeneca outweighs the risk of dying from COVID should be a wake-up call. They should not be injecting anyone, even the at-risk, with experimental vaccines without at least screening them for naturally acquired immunity first. Naturally acquired immunity is broader against these scariants, aka variants, and longer lasting than vaccine-induced immunity. This is known science. We should be questioning why a year into this there has been zero sentinel testing to determine the prevalence of natural immunity. 1 minute, I gotta get to the stuff. More important than all of this, we cannot lose sight of what this is truly about. We cannot get bogged down, distracted, arguing about whether or not masks work, whether or not lockdowns work, whether or not vaccines work or antibodies matter. This fight is not about science. This fight is about ethics. This fight is about morality. This fight is about freedom. We must never forget that the purpose of government is to administer the people's will, not enforce its own. Oh, I got some good fire. Let me try to get through it. It's time for us to focus on reversing the trend of absurdity and tyranny that has surpassed anything we could have imagined. We must work our way up the ladder of corruption. We must hold each and every political figure and public servant accountable for their contribution to this onslaught against our freedoms. We must start with the so-called doctors who have been recorded saying, I just read what they tell me to say. Then we will move up to the politicians who engage in backroom tactics and secret handshakes to achieve hidden agendas that are not to the benefit of the people. And finally, we will reel in the corporate vampires who masquerade as philanthropists and visionary billionaires in the name of some delusional utopia for them and an inescapable cycle of peonage and slavery for us. Klaus Schwab and his brigade of anal swabs believe that humanity needs a great reset. Ironically, this is exactly what we need. We must seize upon this great opportunity to rid the world of these psychopathic billionaires who believe that the obscene wealth and power that they have amassed at the expense of the unsuspecting and good-natured people of this world entitles them to dictate the future of humanity. Please, peace. I got 2 sentences left. 2 sentences, please. We gotta fight back against these people who think they have the right to dictate the future of humanity. A future where people are dependent upon corporate farms and big tech. A future where all that is permitted is obligatory. A future where life is quantified and optimized by some totalitarian cloud AI from the plot of a dystopian movie. A future where hugging your mother is a dangerous act that does not fit into their equation of life. A future where they say, we will own nothing and we will be happy. To them I say, we are the true planet, we are the true power of this planet. We are the caretakers of this land. We are the harbingers of love, peace, and harmony. To them I say, you will own nothing and we will be free.
Thank you very much, Doctor.